Alright guys, welcome to the Octagon Oracle Fight Night Ankalaev versus Guskov full card breakdown. How are you guys doing? This might be a bit of a faster breakdown. I'm going to do the 5 minutes of questions. We'll go through the card a little bit faster than usual. A lot of debuts, so not as in-depth as last week. And then we'll do the recap quickly after. Hey, Isaiah. Any clue on why Walter Walker dropped from minus 280 to minus 175 out of nowhere? We will get to that. What did you think of JPL's performance? I liked it. Even though it was definitely a close fight, I thought he made a lot of improvements. I'll get to the specifics when I go back to the breakdown from last week. Thoughts on Larry and Douglas versus Tommy McMillan? I'd probably pick Douglas, but I wouldn't be like wildly confident or anything. This card makes me depressed, Oracle. I mean, it should at least be somewhat entertaining, I think. Have you seen the Odyssey? No, I have not yet. Hello. Thought on CLD performance in DDP. I thought DDPs was better than CLDs, I'll put it that way. But I won't say I was amazingly impressed with either of theirs. CLD will never beat the Blade accusations. Yeah, 100%. Hey, Faking Harmony. What are the popcorn fights? Let's see. I think that Bonfim versus Sola is going to be a good fight. I think Jacoby versus Saeed is going to be a good fight. Ursek versus Tamirov might be a good fight. It really just depends how it ends up going. Oracle, when CLD is brought up, might cause him to explode. True. CLD has no IQ 100%. Does the UFC make Alex versus Hockett, and if so, who wins? They could go in a lot of directions here. I guess you might as well. It's just weird because Hockett, while he's definitely gotten a following, is not really someone they can push because it's never going to work with their sponsors. So they're going to want to get Hockett beaten in all likelihood. Like, even though the UFC says you can say whatever, which is true to some capacity, they definitely favor guys who they can market more broadly. Could JPL have won round 1, 2, hit a lucky 18 for 30 seconds? Yeah, you could definitely argue that. I'll get to it more in depth. Sure, Remy, let's hear your prediction. CLD low-key a fade? Sure. Yeah, I agree. In the future. Who do you think wins between BSD and Gamrot? It's a tough one. I feel like it could be a fight where Gamrot's winning a lot of the minutes, but BSG just has bigger moments and wins like a decision or something because of it. You still think Ilya beats Islam at 170? Yes. Which fight was your parlay breaker last weekend? So we almost hit a plus 10,000, and we lost it only because DDP lost round 5. The last leg of a very long plus 10,000 parlay was DDP minus 13.5 point spread, because two judges gave it a 49-46 instead of a 50-45 and missed. That was sad. What's your thoughts on UFC 330? Look pretty trash besides the prelims. Anticlimactic so far, yeah. We got a main event, right? Valid. Who has the highest MMA IQ between the MMA community? MMA community being like fighters or coaches or analysts or what? I think DDP being composed didn't really make sense here. Usman doesn't have any real way to counter him other than catching with a jab, and Sooks are awful. Yeah, I agree with you. I think most people know Walter Walker is some kind of gimmick fighter, and that's why I land dropping. To some extent, yeah. DDP looked tired in the 3rd round. Yeah, his cardio held up a lot worse than I expected, not gonna lie. Should DDP have gotten a round 2 TKO? It was like the Luque versus Alvarez situation. Yeah, he should have. That was stupid, I will say. CLD saw the amount of plot armor in the Beyblade series and signed a copy to be the main character. What a genius. Valid. And for example, Strickland isn't marketable. He just says the most out-of-pocket stuff ever. It's crazy. Yeah, and even like Strickland is more marketable than Hockett. I will say that. My prediction's bad. Fair. They tried to get Strickland beat too, and he brought in a lot more eyes. Yeah, agreed. Who beats Ilya? I think if you want someone to like actually beat Ilya when he's being composed, it's probably going to be someone like Rufy or Jean Silva. Which YouTuber has the best IQ in the MMA community? If I have to choose someone outside of myself, I would say probably MMA Shay. But I also don't watch like MMA creators anymore, so take that with a grain of salt. Alright, I'm going to get to the breakdown. I will answer the questions afterwards, or in between during the polls. I'm not going to put up any polls for fights with the debutant because most people are not watching tape on debutant, so it's going to be kind of useless. But we'll start off with Cody Gibson versus Abdul Hussein. Let me grab my notes. Alright, so starting with Hussein, he's mainly a grappler, but he does actually have very heavy hands. He tries to get to the body lock and then just find trips or throws from there. On the ground, he uses ground and pound to open up subs or just end the fight with ground and pound. He doesn't actually have the greatest control, but he's able to mat return pretty consistently, so it tends to work out, and he just kind of breaks his opponents over time. On the feet, he'll stay actually very close to his opponent and just use pressure to wear on them. He'll use a lot of jabs despite staying in the pocket, and will switch stances constantly and look for power uppercuts or straights. He definitely can be countered because of the risks he takes while in close, and he has been out-grappled a few times surprisingly, despite it being his main game plan. Moving on to Gibson. Gibson's a high-paced wrestler when he's at his best. He generally wants to pressure and close the distance quickly, and then just work to double leg or body lock, and then to the back from there. On the ground, he continues to keep a high pace. He'll just try to create scrambles until he can find the submission, or just win the minutes in that fashion. On the feet, he's just constantly doing stuff to push a pace. It's not the most technical, but he'll like double jab into hooks to the body, then come back to the head. He doesn't really have any crazy defense when he's doing it, but I think he just overwhelms a lot of people. The fact that he throws naked calf kicks has cost him a few times now, including getting him knocked out in his last fight. He really just does straight up ignore defense in its entirety. So, yeah, I mean, any high-level striker is definitely going to put him away because of that. So, you have to pick Hussein here, right? I'm going to pick Hussein by TKO. I just don't know what they're seeing to make him a 5-1 favorite nearly. Like, Gibson has flaws, but he's also not a can. And I don't see anything in Hussein that makes me think he's some, like, spectacular fighter. His grappling is not even that impressive. Like, because it's so body lock oriented and he doesn't really shoot regular takedowns, he ends up just holding people against the fence a lot of the time. So, yeah, Hussein by TKO, but maybe he'll show me something that will surprise me, but I'm just not seeing it so far. Yeah, anyways. Moving on to Nurullah Aliev versus Mike Davis. I'll put up a poll for this since most people know both of them. Poll is live. Do you think Ilya will evolve? Yes, losses tend to do that. What do you think of Shea versus Patty? I mean, it'll be interesting. They wanted Fluffy to beat Sean for sure, 100%. VP is definitely going to get cut after his next fight. Yeah, they're just going to wait his contract out. Try to get him beat in the meantime. Oracle is the best fight IQ, no glaze. I appreciate it. What do you think about the Weasel, the YouTuber? I think he's very good also. I mean, I've said this before. I've been like a Weasel hater for a long time. I think he just says stuff and doesn't really know what he's talking about most of the time. DDP's cardio I thought was alright. He's got a Pentosia thing where he switches from death gassing third to fourth. I think there's some grammar mistakes, but I get what you're saying. I kind of get what you're saying, but he definitely slowed down a lot this fight. I think Abdul Hussein is mostly better everywhere. I think he's better in most places, but I think as pure wrestling is a little worse, actually. Hey, Elias. All right, we have Ankalaev at 57%, which kind of matches the odds. I'll end the poll here. So starting with Ankalaev, I actually don't know if it's Ankalaev or Ankalaev, but I'm just going to say Ankalaev. I think that's how the commentator said it. He's basically a pure wrestler. He likes shooting on double legs, but he will take a single leg or a body lock if it prevents itself, of course. On the ground, he pushes his opponents all the way to the fence so they can't really scramble much, then tries to open up with ground and pound from there. He has somewhat kind of postured for submissions, but it's definitely not his strength, and he doesn't really look too heavily for it. On the feet, he tends to throw in combinations. He does actually have reasonable power, but there's no real nuance with his striking, so he is hittable. He has also slowed down in round 3 of several of his fights, so that could definitely be an issue in the future. Moving on to Davis. Davis is technically a Muay Thai striker, but he does prefer grappling for whatever reason. On the feet, he throws out a fair number of kicks and jabs. When he gets comfortable, he'll start putting together brief combinations on the front foot. He has the same weaknesses as a lot of Muay Thai strikers, which is that he doesn't fight well on the back foot and he doesn't have great defense against combinations. He'll shoot on double legs, generally try to work towards the back and the submission from there. If he can't get the sub, he'll look for mount and ground and pound. His cardio looked weirdly terrible last fight. Now, apparently he put on weight for that fight, so that could play a role to say the least, because I haven't seen him gas out like that in the past. Now, I will say, Davis made Ziam look like an absolute world beater, and we saw what happened with Ziam after that. Davis also made Mitch Ramirez look pretty good on the feet, and even in terms of submission defense. And then we saw what happened to Ramirez right after that. So sometimes it's just, like, even though we're supposed to be looking at the fighter skill for skill, because they do well against certain fighters, we assume that they're good or bad. And in all honesty, just because Davis doesn't seem to be performing at the level that Ankalaev is at least trying to get to, I have to lean towards Ankalaev by decision, which is not the most technical breakdown of all time. But it's just like watching Davis get pieced up on the feet by Borshev and pieced up on the ground by Ziam. It was like, are you really going to have any main path to victory in this fight? It doesn't feel like it, in all honesty. So, anyways, Ankalaev by decision. I do expect this fight to go long no matter who wins, though. All right, moving on to Magomed Ankalaev versus Brenson Ribeiro. He's a debutant, not going to put up a poll for this one. So, starting with Ankalaev, he is a pretty well-rounded fighter who fights technically out of Dubai, but typically trains with the Dagestanis. He has the Dagestani style of striking where his combos are thrown like super quickly, just several strikes together before his opponent can react, but they're not really done with like proper hit movement and stuff like that. He will use jabs a lot to get his range. Once his range is established, he'll explode in with combos or hard overhands, flying knees, and he'll put together elbows as well sometimes. If he ends up crashing into the clinch, he'll usually try to get body lock takedowns and get his opponent down from there. He can shoot on double legs, doesn't really seem like he likes to do it typically though. He has pretty solid power, but unproven cardio, so while I don't expect it to be a factor in this fight, it's something to keep an eye on in the future. Ribeiro is a heavy-handed, like, low-volume technical striker, I guess you could kind of say, but it's just all power-oriented. He throws mainly basic combinations, 1-2s and wide hooks from there. He can take a shot somewhat decently and is definitely willing to brawl against lower-level opposition. His striking defense doesn't exist. He will just not react at all. So I don't even know how to analyze it further. He does have grappling, but it's more so defensively opportunistic than he's going to impose it offensively. Like if he gets taken down, he'll go for the guillotine, Kimura, etc., but he's not going to get control or anything like that. He definitely tends to struggle against any fighter who just has any level of ability whatsoever. Like there's no other way of putting that. So obviously I'm going to pick Ankalaev by TKO here. Hibaro has the ability to chin anyone, but it's just probably not going to happen at this point, realistically. All right, moving on to Ismail Bonfim versus Axel Sola. Finally, a more interesting fight. I'll put up a poll for this one. I think the Weasel has good post-fight breakdowns, but I think you're right. He is kind of a pointless predictor. I think he's just so heavily biased that while he definitely doesn't have no understanding of MMA, I'm not going to claim that. It just heavily skews him to the point it's just frustrating to look at. You ever watch much PFL? I watch a little, but I don't watch often. But Julio Arce at even odds against Lagrange Baphomet. Fair. Kind of crazy how Iber is only third and he's already washing, getting sacrificed to prospects. Valid. Is MMA the easiest sport to become champion in? Nah, boxing. Who does that to DR Nurkic? Yeah, 100%. 70-ish% for Sola so far. What about Nansen Sports? I think he's pretty good. I think he's solid, but he also only does short form, and he does really short form, so it's hard to see exactly how much he knows. Unless he does long form that I don't know about, but at least I haven't seen any of it. Is Islam the GOAT if he beats Gary? No, he still has a way to go. There's 30 champions in boxing, so confusing. Honestly, probably more. All right, I'll end the poll here at 68% for Sola. Okay, so starting with Bonfim. Bonfim is a speed-oriented striker who throws mainly hooks. He keeps a high guard, but tries to move out of the way of everything using distance management and timing. He'll explode in with quick combinations of hooks, then get out before his opponent can respond. He will chip away with calf kicks throughout the fight. As he gets his timing, he does open up with larger movements like flying knees. He does have generally solid takedown defense and scrambling, but it hasn't really been tested since the BSD fight, so we can't really talk about it in too much depth. He can struggle to get off the fence if you just constantly pressure him because it takes away his ability to just move defensively. Moving on to Sola. Sola is a rangy striker who just really emphasizes his distance weapons. His best weapon by far is the jab. He constantly pumps it out and bloodies his opponents using it. He tends to move around on the outside and only really commit once he has his reads. Depending on his opponent's stance, he'll either throw a lot of leg kicks or head kicks. He used to have an issue of trading too much in the pocket despite being long. After he got dropped really badly against Imavov's brother, he definitely reduced his intentional trading in the pocket. It still seems to be a weakness, though, on the feet if people are able to close the distance. He throws his left straight a lot more in recent fights when he does get his timing, but he is very patient about it and will pick his spots carefully. He's not just going to start throwing randomly. His ground game has improved substantially due to his time in Dagestan, but he hasn't been able to really use it too much offensively. He will use his height advantage to look for knees in the clinch, but he will struggle with combinations whenever his opponent is actually reasonable at putting them together because, again, distance is his main defense. So I was actually expecting to be really high on Sola here, but if Bonfim is able to close the distance and get into the pocket, I don't think Sola has anything besides the knee to try to dissuade Bonfim. And Sola is not really the type who's going to pressure and make Bonfim uncomfortable. So there's definitely a world in which Sola can just chip away with the jab and use the knee to keep Bonfim from getting close. But it feels like Bonfim is going to be able to close the distance and just land a few hooks, get back out, and just do it on repeat the entire fight. So I am actually going to lean towards Bonfim by decision, even though that's a very low confidence prediction to say the least. All right, moving on to Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Sam Patterson. I'll put up a poll for this and answer a few questions. Like 20 divisions and 3 to 4 champions per division. It's definitely way more than 30. Yeah. No cooler name in the UFC than Axel Sola. How many fights did I miss? I completely forgot it was a Tuesday. It doesn't feel like a fight week. I think like 3 to 4. I'll do a recap later though. Weasel just likes being special. Doing technical analysis used to be special, but now it's oversaturated, so he has to be special by making super biased takes and defending them with his life. Fair enough. Yeah, I don't understand boxing. Yeah, valid. What's the psychology of boxers talking down to MMA fighters? It's just elitist psychology, because boxing was bigger. It was more considered to be a sport, while like MMA was considered to be more savagery in the past, if you know what I mean. I do think Usyk would do an MMA. I mean, as long as he fights at heavyweight, he'd be fine, because heavyweight's just so terrible. Unfeed is sneaky underdog, valid, yeah. You have members only videos? Not as of now. I am still considering doing a Patreon thing, but not yet. Oh, my taste in Patterson, valid. Wasn't Bonfim injured last fight, if I remember correctly? Yeah, there were rumors he had like a torn shoulder or something along those lines. Who's your top 5 MMA goats? Honestly, I would have to look at stuff now, because I feel like it's changed so much recently. Alright, I'll end the poll at 92% for Patterson. Alright, so starting with Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio is old now, but he's a power puncher, but he's definitely slowed down a lot, especially post like his illnesses, so he's not the fighter that he used to be, to say the least. He sets things up with jabs and calf kicks, then tries to time the overhand right from there. He will mix in double leg takedowns, which does make it easier to land his overhand later in the fight. He does have pretty good defense against single strikes, but against combinations, he can just sometimes not see a strike and randomly get rocked by it. His durability is definitely fading really badly as well. He used to be like able to go through a war. He cannot now whatsoever. Moving on to Patterson. Patterson's a very long fighter who used to prefer grappling as the primary path to victory, but has somehow turned into a striker. His main goal, again, used to be secure takedowns, finish the fight on the ground. He would use any method from just snapping you down in a headlock to body lock throws or pretty much any takedown entry. His striking evolved, and it seemed like he just fell in love with it. His striking is mainly counter-oriented. He wants his opponent to overextend because of his height and then just clip them before they reset. He will pressure early at times, but then he tends to let his opponent come forward so that he can either create grappling opportunities or the counter sequences that we just talked about. If he gets the fight to the ground, he is extremely dangerous with submissions, and he historically has finished every opponent very quickly that he has gotten down. His punches are technically thrown, but his chin stays straight up in the air, and he doesn't move his head at all. So if someone actually can close distance, he is still very vulnerable. So even though I'm going to pick Patterson by TKO here, because Ponzi's durability has just looked so terrible, I don't get why people are so confident, because with how much Patterson seems to refuse to move his head in the slightest, Ponzi just landing a jab overhand immediately would not surprise me whatsoever. Like, it shouldn't happen. Patterson is younger. He should be faster. Ponzi's slowing down. He doesn't have the same speed and power. But I don't know. Just one of these fights where the veteran definitely has a chance, even though Patterson should win. The other factor is that if Patterson starts rushing because he feels like he needs to make a highlight so that he gets re-signed here, I mean, it's going to leave slightly more opportunities for Ponzinibbio, but I still will pick Patterson by TKO. We'll see how this one goes. All right, moving on to Dustin Jacoby versus Mohamed Saeed. So for anyone confused about who Mohamed Saeed is, who's trying to do their own tape study and such, he changed his name randomly at some point. So you might find some of his tape under Magomed Saidov, I think. Just subbed and liked the stream. Appreciate it. Everyone like the stream? Yes, thank you for the reminder. Everyone, if you do not mind, please do like the stream. Definitely helps me get more visibility here. He's rebranding to sound more Arab. Fair. Saeed is quick for a light heavyweight. I do agree. 84% on Jacoby. Isn't Magomed and Muhammad the same thing? Yeah, I think it's just different, like, language/translation or something like that, but I don't know. All right, ending the poll here. So, starting with Jacoby. Jacoby is a high-volume kickboxer. He has a pretty interesting style where he's a lot more fluid than most kickboxers when they switch to MMA. He moves around a lot on the outside, and he moves his upper body constantly to kind of just try to fatigue your nervous system. He'll pump out 20% power strikes constantly, then commit to a strike when he finds an opening. He does have one-punch knockout power, but he does focus on the jab so consistently in any fight that does go long. Going to a close decision with Azamat did age pretty well until the Paulo Costa fight, but I still think it is a pretty good performance. The biggest issue for him is that his head movement doesn't really keep up with his loose style. So sometimes counters and combinations in general can just catch him. Like the Menafield fight is a fight that on paper Jacoby should win 10 out of 10 times, but Menafield just winging random combos constantly eventually caught him enough to win 2 rounds, which was very strange to watch. Anyways, moving on to Saeed. Saeed is a very fluid kickboxer, even blows Jacoby out of the water there. He doesn't project anything, he'll just move into strikes very seamlessly. He throws out a large variety of kicks, from spinning wheel kicks to regular calf kicks, and will just chip away at his opponent over time. If his opponent is trying to close the distance, he'll throw out a lot of knees to counter. He will also try to time overhands if his opponent is entering recklessly, and he alternates between backing up and countering and pressuring forwards trying to land combination. So there's something weird about Saeed, and I'm going to say this in advance. He's either a complete fraud or he's amazing. And I don't know which it is, as weird as that sounds. Because if you watch his tape, he looks like someone who's been kickboxing for 20 plus years. Just the way he throws things is just, I don't even fully know how to explain it without showing it. But the way he moves is very educated, to say the least. That being said, his resume is definitely padded with terrible fighters, and he has some glaring weaknesses. He just decides to not check calf kicks at all. He will literally just ignore them and walk through them and just keep striking. He also has somewhat questionable cardio. It's not terrible, he's not going to death gas, but after round 1, you could definitely see he visibly slows down. The finishing threat is definitely diminished, to say the least. Just because, usually I try to base things purely analytically here, but I'm going to trust my gut on this one and pick Saeed. I don't know why. I feel like he's just going to chin Jacoby. I feel like Jacoby is going to be pumping out the jab, having his moments, and then just get clipped by a massive overhand or a spinning wheel kick or something. Because Saeed throws it so out of nowhere, and Jacoby stays in the fire a lot longer than most fighters do at this weight class. So I'm going to pick Saeed by round 1 TKO, but he might look absolutely terrible and make me regret that prediction. All right, moving on to Walter Walker versus Thomas Peterson. I'll put a poll for this. All right, poll is live. Jacoby is low-key top 15 level. Yeah, I agree. Subscription time. I think we're almost there. I'll do the pitch soon. Oracle, please don't strike me down. I was slightly late to the stream. Glad to see you here, Derm. Also happened against Reyes when he got caught bad. Yeah. Remember when we thought Reyes was going to be on a title run because he went on that run? I did think it was a little bit generous, to say the least, because Jacoby also lost to Menafield, but yes, there was some hype back, to say the least. Thoughts on Sterling versus Jan? If Jan was younger, it would be easy. As an old man, I'll have to see who I'm going to pick there. I'm not positive. Oracle, when you're doing fight companions, I remember you tuned in to watch Brian battle fight when he got immediately finished. That was so hilarious. I need to figure that out. I'm probably not going to be able to do it over the next few weeks, but I need to see what I could do. All right, so Walker's at 70%. I'll add in the poll here. So starting with Walter Walker, he is the modern era heel hook specialist, except at least he doesn't hold on to it after the tap like Paul Harris did. The biggest issue with analyzing Walker is we really don't know how his striking looks at all. He has landed under 20 strikes in his last 4 fights. He is capable of throwing decent kicks from what we've seen, He was also able to hurt Kennedy with straight punches, but he just kind of ran at him with his chin in the air. So it was, I don't know if that's a sustainable thing. He will shoot on double legs, then either switch to the back from there or pick up his opponents up and put them down. On the ground, he used to use ground and pound a lot on the regional scene, but we haven't really seen it in the UFC yet. We also don't really know how his cardio will hold up, because even though he's in much better shape than he was in his first fight, we haven't really had to see him go late in fights since the first fight, so who knows. Moving on to Peterson. Peterson is pretty much a pure wrestler. He'll throw lead, leg, calf kicks, jabs, a few southpaw crosses, mainly just to force you to get your hands up, then he'll just immediately shoot under after that. He has a variety of takedown entries. He's fine going in on a single or double leg and will finish it however he needs to. His biggest issue is that he has minimal fight-ending ability. He doesn't have great control on the ground, so he kind of needs a perfect 15 minutes to win, which he usually at some point fails to do. Last fight did show that he does have power in his hands if he does just start swinging, but even with a knockdown, he couldn't finish the fight, so I'm still going to say he doesn't really have fight-ending ability. So, the reason why the odds have gotten closer, for the person who asked that earlier, is because there's so much we just don't know about Walker. We know pretty much exactly where Peterson is in his career. We don't know if Walker can get takedowns after round 1. We don't know if Walker can take down someone who actually has takedown defense. We don't know if Walker can strike for 3 rounds, etc. So, and also even adding to that, we don't know how Walker's takedown defense is. So if Peterson shoots first, is Walker going to get taken down? Is he going to be able to reverse? Like, we have no idea. I'm going to pick Walker by decision. I think that he will have the bigger moments, especially with the kicks on the feet, because he just has such a massive length advantage. And I think even if he gets taken down, he can threaten a sub, which will probably win him the round. But I could definitely see him not finishing Peterson. Maybe the BJJ gap is just so massive that he's able to, but we haven't seen Walker fight anyone with BJJ. So yeah, I'm going to say Walker wins the decision, but I have no clue how this fight is going to go in all honesty. Moving into just Bagayev versus Saigid, I think is Gakmaev. Sorry, I don't know how to say these names. All right. I will put up, I'm not going to put up a poll. They're like, it's one debutant and someone with one fight. Whatever, we'll just get to the breakdown. So, starting with Bagayev, he is basically a very, very boring version of Ankalaev. He just plods forwards, throws out the jab a lot. He will sometimes extend the jab into longer combinations. He's pretty much a pure point fighter. He has no finishing threat whatsoever. He mixes things up with takedowns, usually double leg shots. On the ground, his control is pretty terrible and he doesn't do any damage. If you force him backwards, his defense kind of sucks and he can just get caught by combos there. Saigid is a Dagestani, but he is a lot more explosive than the average Dagestani. His takedowns are mainly double legs against the fence, where he'll just like try to explode to pick you up and slam you down rather than like transition constantly like a regular Dagestani would. He does have a solid jab on the feet. He is explosive at jumping into the pocket or just throwing in general, but he will overextend because of how fast and powerful he is. He does prefer to counter rather than playing defense, so he will sometimes just accept getting hit so he could try to return. He does death gas if the fight goes past round 2. We saw that against Dalby, and that's why I was so close. Dalby by round 3 TKO was like plus 3,500 or something, and I had something on that. It looked like he was going to get it for a moment, just couldn't follow through. But yeah, Saigid is not going to win a round 3, let's put it that way, unless something like dramatically changes. I was a little bit surprised that Bagayev opened at such a massive favorite because he's not tested. And even though Saigid isn't great, we've at least seen him do okay against okay comp. And he has the finishing upside here. He probably will have the bigger moments. Maybe Bagayev is just perfect through 3 rounds. It's very possible. But I'm going to pick Saigid by TKO here because Bagayev has been chinned before. He doesn't have crazy durability or anything. So I could see Saigid just jumping into the pocket and chinning him within the first round. So yeah, I'm going to pick Saigid by TKO. All right, now we get to the promo. Pretty much same promo every week. I am just stacking the long shot bets that people in the community are hitting just to give more and more evidence of how good or how well we're doing, I should say. If you guys are educated bettors, or at this point just want to have more tools and more information for your bets, do consider joining the betting community. we have the best tools for UFC on the planet. I am very confident now. I just pushed another massive update towards our algorithms. So now we basically can plot out exactly how a fight will go, like method of victory, how many strikes each fighter will get, how many takedowns, like in different scenarios, how the fight will go, stuff like that. And that is combined with the fact that Strategy 4 has been ridiculously powerful. It's like the fourth iteration of the algorithms just for money lines, and it's done so well so far with like, yeah, underdogs that no one is picking. So only $25 a month. Link is in the bio here. You can see like literally the last 3 events. We've had people hit ridiculous long shots here. I think most of you guys are probably in the chat here. If you want to announce yourselves, feel free to. So yeah, feel free to DM me on Instagram or just click the link in the description here and sign up to get into the Discord. All right, moving on to Rizvan Kuniev versus Tyrell Fortune. I'll put up a poll for this. All right, poll is live. Remember the Jim Miller prediction? That was crazy. Jim Miller round 1 sub. Kuniev starting at 95%. All right, this looks like it's going to be a wash. We have 92% on Kuniev so far. Walter said in his first fight he was cycling on and off. That's why I guessed. Like literally, he said that. That's wild. A bad feeling Fortune wins is possible. Me and Tyrell Fortune look alike. Fair enough. That chuckle makes me think you're picking Fortune. We'll see. You'll see in a second. Did you see Whaley's transformation? That was wild. All right, I'm ending the poll here at 85% for Kuniev. All right, so starting with Kuniev, he is quite literally possibly the biggest steroid cheat we have seen in MMA history, like at least at the high levels. He is well-rounded, but he mainly relies on having very fast hands. He doesn't have the longest reach for heavyweight, so he definitely needs to get into the pocket and will often try to slip a strike of his opponent to do so. He's seemingly very open to calf kicks and jabs at distance. He does have solid takedown defense though, but I'm not positive how much of it is circumstantial, because the Almeida fight was just weird. Like, watching that, I didn't know if he just had spectacular takedown defense that I was unaware of, or if Almeida just didn't try at all. I'm going to assume he had solid takedown defense, but we might find out otherwise. Against strikers, he will turn into a little bit more of a wrestler if he needs to, and he's just very willing to do that for 3 rounds. Moving on to Fortune. Fortune is a somewhat diverse power striker with wrestling in his back pocket. He likes to lunge forwards with the lead hook into straight or just an overhand. He'll blast kicks as hard as possible. He'll continue in combinations if he does get you hurt off the initial strikes he throws. He is a little, maybe pretty dumb. He will go for takedowns after nearly knocking out his opponent and just stall out and let them recover. When he shoots, it's mainly on blast doubles, and he'll do damage on the ground from there. He does have solid takedown defense, but it is not perfect, and on the ground, he doesn't really have any great ability to get up. He also definitely gasses over the course of a fight. It is a big problem for him. So, I think both of them suck, just to put it bluntly. This is heavyweight though, so in all fairness, pretty much everyone there sucks. But I will say this, I think at heavyweight, having fast hands is a massive advantage, because heavyweights just can't fight in the pocket at all. So, because of that, I'm going to lean towards Kuniev, because I think he can close the distance and just spam stuff until he's able to make Fortune drop. So I'm going to pick Kuniev by TKO, but it's like, just cut heavyweight. I don't even want to see heavyweight fights, not going to lie. All right, moving on to Magomed, John Pork versus Damian Rebechki, I think you would say the last name. I won't put up a poll for this since it's a debut, but I will get to the breakdown. So starting with John Pork, he's an aggressive Muay Thai striker. He throws a lot of teeps and calf kicks at range. He does throw some jabs, but a lot of his strikes are looping hooks, overhands, or uppercuts. He likes to counter with hooks as his opponents come in. A lot of his defense is using speed to just be slightly out of the way and then return. Despite how hard he throws, he kind of has pillow hands and he usually goes to decision. He also has about 3 minutes of cardio before he starts mouth breathing very heavily. Damian is mainly a boxer, though he does have well-rounded abilities. He switches stances a lot while pressuring forwards and looking to land combinations. He makes sure to stay unpredictable regarding whether he's targeting the body or head. He throws some calf kicks on the outside and the occasional teep. Sometimes he can get caught as he enters, and he is a little open to jabs because of how much he commits. He does have a reasonable level of scrambling and takedown defense. He did also get a lot of subs and takedowns in his early fights, but it hasn't been tested at a high level, so I don't really know how competent it is yet. So, you guys know my opinions on John Pork. You see this guy. He has no defense or power after 3 minutes in a fight. He starts out very explosive. For the first 2.5 minutes, yeah, he can chin people. After the first 2.5 minutes, he turns into a pillow-handed volume puncher who's just throwing stuff out and praying to not get chinned in the meantime. Now, all of this being said, Damian is very green. I feel like he probably should have had 2 or 3 more fights before he went into the UFC. But he does train with Topuria. He's at a good camp. He is a main training partner for Topuria. They obviously see something in him. He can bring out the wrestling if he needs to. So I'm going to very mildly lean towards Damian, because I think that he can stay safe from the wild hooks and just use more fundamental boxing to get into the pocket and open up from there. John Pork, of course, also got dropped by the guy on the Contender series, who proceeded to lose his next 2 fights as well. So not exactly a good look. So yeah, I'm going to pick Damian by decision. And yeah, I just have a very low opinion of John Pork, to say the absolute least. All right, moving on to Islam Dulatov versus Wellington Turman. Dulatov's a minus 950. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm not going to do a poll. It's going to be 100% for Dulatov. But starting with Dulatov, he's an explosive, burst-oriented power puncher. He'll enter, reset, then enter again. He likes to enter with the cross hook or hook cross, but he will just spam hooks in the pocket sometimes as well. In the clinch, he focuses a lot on knees up the middle. He has an offensive ground game, but the defense hasn't really been tested. He does love to fumble finishes by starting to grapple for no clear reason after a knockdown, so you kind of have to be unconscious for him to get the knockout win. His long-term weakness is that he's very open as he enters, so he can be countered there. Turman is well-rounded in that he's nearly equally bad at everything, but he's technically a grappler. He has reasonable power in his hands and will circle and just look to land basic combos and calf kicks. He shoots mainly on single legs, but he's not really great at them, honestly. And he doesn't have much defense besides circling and praying his opponents miss. He is also wildly chinny and pretty easy to put away. So, yeah, I mean Dulatov by round 1 TKO. We can just get that over with. All right, moving on to Steve Erceg versus Ramazan Tamirov. I'll put a poll for this one since it's more interesting. All right, poll should be live. I was totally going to pick Wellington from a ballot. John Pork probably wins a decision due to his experience, but honestly, I think he could fraud check soon. Yeah, it's possible he takes this one, for sure. Why does this chat hate John? He's just very low level. German hasn't fought in 2 years, yeah. Bedtime by decision, fair. 76% for Erceg so far. Y'all acting like he can't improve. He's not young. He's already had a lot of fights, and kickboxing first and then MMA, and he hasn't really improved at all, so. Wow, up to 79% for Erceg, which is a little surprising given the odds. All right, I'll end the poll here at 77% for Erceg. All right, starting with Erceg. Usyk started off as a grappler, but he has turned into more of a striker in the UFC. He throws out a lot of jabs at range and tries to counter constantly with the lead hook. When he gets his timing, he will throw slightly longer combinations. He doesn't move his head, so he's very prone to fast overhands and such. He will shoot on singles and double legs, and he has reasonable control on the ground. But his anti-grappling is realistically a lot better than his offensive grappling. Tamirov is an extremely explosive striker. He throws very hard-spinning back kicks at range. Otherwise, he will just spam overhands and hooks at full power, sometimes in combination. He somewhat lunges into all of his strikes. He will feint a little bit to set things up, but his cardio is pretty garbage, and he will fade very heavily into the third round. Honestly, even after like halfway through round 2, he really starts to fade. This fight is going to go one of two ways, right? Either Tamirov is going to chin him very early, or Usyk is going to survive the danger zone and just put it on Tamirov later, because Tamirov is not going to be able to keep up cardio-wise from what we've seen. Tamirov popping for a cardio-enhancing substance also makes me a little bit more confident in the cardio direction. So while this could go either way realistically, I'm going to pick Usyk by decision. I think Usyk is the better fighter. Does that necessarily mean he's guaranteed to win? Of course not, because, I mean, Tamirov always has that chance and Usyk is the right fighter to catch. But I also don't think that Tamirov has the skill or ability of a Kai Kara France. Like, Kai set up the overhands combo with a lot of feints and strikes to the body first. So it caught Usyk a bit more off guard. Tamirov is just going to come out and start immediately spamming the combo. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a lot easier to predict. And as long as Usyk has put any effort into improving that weakness, I think he should be able to survive round 1 and take the decision. All right, moving on to Magomed Ankalaev versus Bogdan Guskov. I will put up a poll. All right, poll is live. I don't think Tamirov hits as hard as Kai Kara France. I agree, because Kai has like really put people down with one shot constantly. Tamirov has done that, don't get me wrong, but they tend to get up again. DDP by KO. That sucks. He was very close. How long ago was Tamirov's substance issue? I mean, it was for his recent stuff. He just got off suspension. Ankalaev starting off at 75%. Tamirov will nearly get a finish in round 1, then Usyk will take over at range 2 and 3. Very possible. Cody Osborne landing overhands on bedtime MMA. How do you think Usyk could improve going forward? I mean, he needs to start moving his head. Ode versus Usyk was at 135. True. Ankalaev decision, but he'll drop Guskov. Very possible. Guskov in 2. That'd be interesting. All right. Ankalaev's zone is 69%. Ankh gonna find a way to take this to a dull decision, even though he should KO Guskov. Unfortunately, very possible. All right. Gonna end the poll here at 67% for Ankalaev. All right, starting with Ankalaev. Ankalaev is a southpaw boxer. He's very plotting heavy, so he doesn't really have any intricate footwork, to say the least. He will let opponents back him up early if they try to, and just make his reads from there. He does his initial work with his jab, then once he gets his range, he'll open up with the cross more so. He'll mix things up with teeps and takedowns, but they're not his primary strength. His takedowns are mainly double legs. From there, he'll mainly control, but he will land a little bit of ground and pound. The biggest issue for him is being swarmed. He seems to not really know what to do if his opponents are able to stay in the pocket. He can build over 5 rounds because he doesn't slow down, but in early rounds he can definitely drop a few just by being a little too patient. Moving on to Guskov. Guskov is very much a single moment power puncher. And what I mean by that is that he will fall behind in pretty much all of his fights. But if he gets a second of success, he can finish the fight from there. He keeps his hands a little bit low and will float around on the outside. He wants to pull his opponents into his strikes and then kind of lunge forwards with a counter or combo from there. His takedown defense has been abysmal so far, so we'll see if that plays a role here. His strategy on the feet is very risky because he really invites eating strikes. And if you do that, people will land on you clean. And while maybe they haven't landed on you clean enough yet, besides the Ozdemir fight, like it will happen eventually because you're not really defensively sound and you know that and you're basing your strategy around that. So realistically, Guskov just doesn't have the style to beat Ankalaev. I don't think he's going to catch him. Ankalaev's way too patient and is just going to use his jab constantly and pick at Guskov. And Guskov, from what we've seen, isn't going to swarm Ankalaev. If Guskov tried to swarm Ankalaev, that's where this would get very interesting. But if he does the same thing of, oh, let me just float around on the outside and wait for my opportunity, he's just going to eat like 200 jabs and then get TKO'd later. So I am picking Ankalaev by late TKO here. I just don't think that Guskov is going to fight in the manner that he would need to beat Ankalaev. And even if Guskov does try to swarm, there's the issue that he has no takedown defense. So Ankalaev could just turn into the pure Dagestani wrestler here and just take him down on repeat if he really needed to. So yeah, once again, Ankalaev by TKO. All right, you guys heard the pitch before, but just putting it on the screen again. If you guys want what are, in my opinion, the best betting tools in the UFC space, link is in the description here. Feel free to DM me on Instagram as well. You can also ask people in the chat here what their opinions on it, because a lot of people are signed up. All right, now I will get to questions. Oh, maybe we'll do the recap, then I'll get to questions. Let's go all the way back, yeah. So, Melisano versus Barbosa, I mean, when exactly was it supposed to? Barbosa got her down and subbed her. We can't say anything there. Harris versus Hines, this very much showed if someone pops for PEDs, their durability is probably not going to be the same after. Because I thought Harris would have to like hurt Hines and then sub him to put him away or win a decision, but he just put him out. So, I mean, good for Harris, short notice opportunity, and he actually has a lot of potential for a heavyweight. But yeah, no, just cut Hines because he's evidently useless post-PED pop. Korea versus Nicole. Yeah, I mean, this is why I picked Korea by decision. He just continually disappoints in terms of the performance he's actually supposed to have. I don't think he's as good as people think he is. He's well-rounded, but like he has a lot of defensive flaws. Someone will punish that eventually. If it was someone not named Stuart Nicole, I mean, they would have had a good chance of hurting him on the ground or even just lighting him up in the pocket. So I'm still very low on Eldon Correa, but I mean, he gets it done again. Moving on to Felipe Franco versus Levi Rodriguez. Yeah, this went about as exactly as I said it would. I'm very happy with my prediction here because Rodriguez backs up to the fence way too easily, while someone like the guy whose name I was blank on Contender Series, while he sucks at takedowns and isn't going to be able to get you down, Franco actually knows what a takedown is and can finish it and can do damage from there. So good on Franco for being composed enough to not burn his cardio, but efficient enough to get the finish. He is actually someone who could go far if he continues to improve, in my opinion. He's also very young. All right, moving on to the important fight of the card. JPL versus Seokyeon Ko. Both of these fighters actually impressed me a fair amount. JPL's wrestling, way better than I expected. I thought he was going to get taken down. He was going to need to threaten subs, get back to his feet, stuff like that. Not only did he not really get taken down, he took down Ko, which I was not expecting because Ko has good hips and is usually able to reverse those situations. On the flip side, Ko's striking looked a lot more technical than it normally does. He wasn't just spamming the overhand and hook like he typically does. He was actually using his jab, setting things up, etc. People have asked me how I scored round one, how I scored the fight as a whole. I leaned a 30-27 for JPL because I did feel like the guillotine was the biggest moment of round one. You could definitely say round one goes to Ko though, and the guillotine isn't enough, and it's just round 2 and 3 for JPL. JPL did a good job at securing round 3 near the end of the round because it was very close and Ko might have gotten it until like the last minute. And then he just teed off against the fence, was able to get the slam, stuff like that. So good on JPL. He's going to go very far. He's also not young, but not in his prime yet. So he has like 3 years of building before we're going to see his peak version. So I'm very excited to see that. And Ko will still get plenty of wins from here. While I don't think he's ever going to be a champion or anything, he's always going to be a fighter who's going to give a good performance, in my opinion. All right, moving on to Bashi versus Delgado. So, multiple controversies with this fight, but we'll start with the interesting thing. Similar to last fight, both fighters did well where they weren't supposed to, and didn't do as well where they were expected to. So, Bashi's striking looked significantly improved. Bashi's wrestling did not look great. Delgado's striking looked mid. Delgado's grappling defense looked spectacular. So very interesting evolution from both of them at the same time. I do think they both have potential. I don't think this fight like really killed off a prospect or anything. So it was the best possible outcome for the UFC in that sense. I will say that I think Bashi got a little bit overconfident when he was hurting Delgado a lot early because he started really loading up on stuff and being like, oh, I want to put this guy away on the feet. If he just stuck to technical striking, I think he probably wins that. That being said, of course, good on Delgado to find the shot to change the fight in round 1. Round 2 is the pivotal round if we go to decision, and it was a very close round. I have rewatched it a few times because a lot of people were arguing about it. I still score it to Bashi. I think the visuals looked bad because Bashi was still messed up from round 1, but if we're actually scoring the impact of what happened in round 2, Bashi had the slightly larger moments. That being said, I'm not going to claim it's a robbery or something. I think the more controversial part of the fight is the fact that Delgado tapped to the guillotine in round 3, and that just never got addressed. If you haven't seen that, go back to when Bashi gets the guillotine. I think it was mounted in round 3, and you'll see Delgado taps and then kind of like changes his mind after tapping a bit because Bashi was decided to just transfer to full mount and start landing ground and pound, and then the ref just doesn't notice and do anything. So that was a problem. I'm still fond of the fact that nothing ever happens in those situations because the result should probably be overturned, but it was still a good fight and a good showing from both of them. McMillan versus Montez. So, yeah, I should have trusted my gut and just fully went with Tommy because the fight went basically exactly as I was saying. Even though Montez is the better technical fighter, Tommy just has better attributes. That being said, he does definitely have pillow hands. I did think he would put Montez away a lot earlier if he was having success like that. It took him 300 strikes to get a knockdown, which is not great to say the least. But yeah, Montez doesn't do well with being swarmed. He's also just doesn't have the cardio to keep up with a high-paced fight. Tommy, whenever he fights someone who has actual power, they're going to sleep him. But until then, he'll be able to put on a show. I don't think Tommy has much potential, to be honest, but it's entertaining. All right, moving on to the other important fight of the card. Yeah, Klein absolutely destroyed Richie as we expected. There was no way for Richie to win this fight. There was absolutely no situation where she had the advantage. Round 3, Klein was just messing around for half the round and dominating her. I do wish Klein pushed a little more heavily for the finish. I think if Klein tried to back her up to the fence before she started letting go with the boxing combos, she would have had more success fighting the TKO. But it doesn't even matter, right? Klein gets the easy 30-27. You could even argue 30-26. Klein is the uncrowned champion of the division. As much as I love Wei Li, and I think Wei Li would beat, say, a Dern and such, Klein is going to run through everyone. She's just way too good. Hooper versus Ramirez. This was a trap fight for a lot of people. I think a lot of people were being Hooper gets chinned too easily. Ramirez looked half decent against Davis. Unfortunately, Ramirez just has no talent, and it sucks because he seems like a good guy who works hard, but Hooper at least has talent on the ground. Ramirez doesn't really have talent anywhere. Fight goes how it goes. Cannonier versus Duncan. First of all, I really hope they cut Cannonier at this point because he's so boring. All he wants to do is just clinch you against the fence the entire fight. That is his entire goal. He won't even get takedowns. He'll just clinch you against the fence. That being said, of course, CLD should have put him away multiple times and would have if he wasn't obsessed with spinning every 5 seconds. He just had to stick with straight punches, and he would have gotten a knockout 5 or 6 times in this fight. So frustrating. But whatever, CLD technically wins by pretty clear decision, despite making every wrong decision possible. DDP versus Kamaru Usman. So I have a controversial opinion on this fight, which is that I don't think that DDP looked very good. DDP almost finished him many times, and I expected that. That is nothing out of the ordinary. He had a good game plan with the knees and the head kicks and such. DDP usually has a good game plan, of course, except against Chimaev, but every other fight he's had a good game plan, so it makes sense. That didn't surprise me, and it's hard to be impressed because I already knew that was going to happen. But his cardio did not hold up well. I thought it was going to hold up a lot better than that, especially in a fight where he really wasn't getting hit or anything. And he just didn't chase the finish when he had Usman hurt, and he could have finished it multiple times. He just didn't push. And I don't understand that, and it feels like he was a little less clean than he's been in his last few fights. I know that he's not of the age where we typically see people coming out of their primes, but it feels like he's been in a lot of wars, even pre-UFC, and it just felt like he was slowing down a little bit. So as much as I like DDP, I have a feeling we're starting to see the beginning of the end for him here, and I do hope I'm wrong. Of course, he technically dominates this fight, but Usman was never as good as people thought he was. He can't deal with chaos. He can't deal with someone who has the physicality to not get bullied, stuff like that. So DDP wins dominantly, but I'm not expecting we're going to see much of that in the future, to be honest. All right, now I'll get to a few more questions. Does DDP get slept by Pyfer? It's very possible. Agreed. I don't know why more people aren't talking about how gassed he was after round 2. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this fight felt useless to me. All we learned is Usman has bad knees and is a worse striker than DDP, which we already knew. Yeah, for sure. The only chaos Usman could deal with is Covington. Even then, he needed to use a lot of fake fouls, which unfortunately is also a very stereotypical Usman thing to do, which he's done many times now, but it is what it is. Based on his performance, DDP versus Strickland, Imavov. I'd pick Imavov against DDP right now. Strickland is always going to be a close fight, but I might honestly have to lean Strickland. Oracle, I speak for all of us when I say that we love the Instagram story breakdowns between fights, especially controversial decisions and bad refereeing. Glad to hear it. I will definitely keep doing so. What's next for DDP, Imavov, and Strickland? I think Imavov should get the title shot, and maybe we do a DDP versus Chimaev rematch. I think Chimaev should move up in all honesty, but if he wants to stay at that weight class, maybe do the rematch. Islam Camp does have that invincibility order, praying for a Kyoji performance out of Damon. Valid. DDP versus Barnell, and I think that should be next. That would be another good one. I feel like you're a little overly critical on DDP here. I don't think so, because I like DDP. If anything, I would be biased in his favor. We need DDP versus Fluffy. If Fluffy wins his next fight, we know for sure. That would be good as well. Rahiki versus Tommy, I think nightmare for Tommy. Yeah, Rahiki would probably sleep him. Not committing to a finish doesn't make him worse. My opinion, TKO'd him round 2. His technique basically looked the same. His cardio was a bit concerned, to be honest. I don't think his technique looked the same. I do think, and it might just be because I've watched an absurd amount of DDP tape, but I think it looked off. Donner Navajo. I'll have to watch tape. In his prime, Jan easily. Now, I don't know. I think DDP would beat Ellen, but he does concern me against guys like Imavov or Kao. Yeah, valid. I did like the knee from DDP in the fight. Yeah, that was definitely good game planning. Do you think Ankalaev could ever move up to heavyweight? Not really, to be honest. I mean, could he get wins there? Yeah, for sure. Any decent light heavyweight could. But could he have, like, crazy success? I don't think so. Yes, we love the Instagram story. Glad to hear it. Do you think Chimaev will move up to light heavyweight or stay to fight? I assume you mean at middleweight. I think it depends on if they actually give him the immediate rematch or not. If they don't give him the rematch, I think he'll move up. Thoughts on Arman versus Colby rough outcome? Yeah, I think that Arman's an overrated wrestler. It's just the reality, right? He's good in MMA, don't get me wrong, but as a pure wrestler, he's overrated. Where he lands on Tommy, Tommy is done 100%. DDP or Kaio? That's a tough one. I don't know. I would really have to like look at the tape and see stylistically how it matches up. People forget Man Oracle's baking and cheesecake when the Brady Buckley odds got weird. Yeah, 100%. I'd recommend watching Ankalaev versus AJ McKee when it happens, high level fight for non-UFC. Yeah, I definitely will watch that one. I do think McKee's probably going to fraud check Ankalaev. But I wonder if they're going to do any drug testing for that. Because I think Ankalaev's done a lot. What do you think Islam needs to do in order to be the GOAT? I think he'd need like probably 3-ish more defenses or so. Maybe, yeah, probably 3 or so. You see Weidman saying Tommy should fight Pico next. I know Pico is most likely not champ material to come out. Yeah, that would be a ridiculous job to make sense. McMillan's the greatest prospect the sport has ever seen. Maybe a little bit of a stretch. Usman did hurt DDP in the last round. Yeah, I do think so. I think it's a little bit overblown because I think he just knew he could stall out, but he definitely was not comfortable. What made you think it looked off? Just a bit curious. Usually his stuff is very, very well timed and placed. And the timing and placement was just not as clean as it usually is. DDP looked slow and reacted too much to the takedown feints. Yeah, true. Islam beats Ian, he's the GOAT of the sport, but the most skilled is DJ by far. Islam is up there, though. I feel like it's still hard to say because so many of his wins have asterisks. Like, okay, he fought a Poirier who shouldn't have been anywhere near a title shot. He fought a Volk on day's notice. He had a controversial win over Volk in the other one. Like, he doesn't have many fights where you can really say, oh, that was a great performance. Like, the Charles fight is pretty much the last fight where you could say, like, oh, this is the opponent he was supposed to be fighting, and it was a good performance. Would you ever do breakdowns on big non-UFC cards, like the upcoming Ryzen event with Ankalaev, Erjan versus Musayev? I'd consider it, but it would be a little bit tough to do, just time-wise. Didn't Islam cheat in the Charles fight too? Yeah, that's the other problem with Islam, is it's so hard to consider him the GOAT when he's like literally has record uncalled fouls. Ankalaev is so good, trust me, you gotta watch. I'm not very high on Ankalaev. I know a lot of people agree with you though. JDM was dominance. Yeah, that was a good one. It's just, it was, I don't know if I could call it dominance, because control is the lowest metric of scoring. GSP literally used to grab shorts in order to get takedowns. I mean, do you have an example of that? Because I don't remember it, but I could be off. Thoughts on the World Cup final? I mean, I don't have the knowledge of that type of stuff to really speak on it much. PFL is very unlucky. Their cards just fall apart during fight week. Fair. Every MMA GOAT has asterisks. To an extent, yeah. How do you think Joseph Benavidez would do nowadays flyweight division? Not great. Flyweight has evolved a lot. Volk might go, to be honest. That's somewhat defensible. I mean, I wouldn't personally say it, but I can understand the opinion. How do you think Oliveira versus Lopez goes? I think Oliveira would sleep him within like a few minutes. This being pen fights, I'll have to rewatch it at some point. Who's your top 3 GOATs? I don't know right now, because so much has happened in the sport, I feel like I have to reevaluate. I want to see Lopez, Yair main event at UFC Noche. That would be nice. Thoughts on Charles versus Armin 2 being rumored? I think Charles has a solid chance. DDP was out 11 months, to be fair, so maybe it's a ring rust thing. I mean, maybe. Oracle, how did Benavidez back Magomed? Just confidence, I guess. They should go back to that one casino in Vegas where Jan and Marab fought the first time. Fair. Benavidez might be tired, to be honest. Insane scrambling ability. I don't think so, honestly. I don't think he has the same like scrambling ability of a Royval or something like that. First paid intel, but I have no idea. Luke Rockhold is my go-to long Diego Lopez in Rayport. Fair enough. I think Diego's a nightmare matchup for Charles. The problem is Diego is way too reliant on taking stuff on the chin. And like we're scaling up in power now. Like Garcia was a chin test, don't get me wrong. Garcia hits harder than a lot of previous opponents that he's fought. But Charles is a whole level above that. I just can't see him taking Charles shots. Do you think Ian Gary could pull the upside? I think people are severely underestimating how good Ian defensively is in the States. And technical Gary could school Islam. I agree with you. I'm probably not going to pick Gary, though I haven't done tape for it yet. But he has a much better chance than people are making it seem. Who would you back in a fight between Vachejos and Pico, and when is Yair getting slammed down this in my life? I'd pick Vachejos. I don't know when Yair is coming back, though. Alright, guys. I'm going to have to call it here, though. I appreciate you guys showing up. If you guys haven't liked the stream already, please do. If you guys are betting on this event, do consider signing up for the betting service. The link is in the description here. Feel free to DM me on Instagram with any questions. Hope you guys enjoy the event if you're watching. Have a good night, and I will see you guys next time.